Welcome back to the Ring Chess fans. This is Chessbox Worldwide, and you know we only bring you the very best. Today we got a game that starts with as a positional masterpiece, but ends as a salvage tactical slugfest. We are diving into a crucial must-watch battle from the 2025 National League. Wielding the white pieces is the formidable Were Samuel, a pillar of the prestigious Chiroka Chess Club, a man who knows how to close out a tournament. He recently crashed the competition with a perfect 6 out of 6 score to win the 2024 Bungoma Open in Kenya. Playing black from Lighthouse is the calculating Ampaire Brenan, a proven champion who delivers under pressure. Remember his gold and individual bronze performance for Chambogo University at the Inter-University Games. Today, Ampaire has a lethal surprise waiting. Get ready to see a chess battle where the opening theory is thrown out of the window for a thrilling attack that features a queen sacrifice that tears the Kingside apart. A game packed with lessons you won't want to miss. Hit that like button, subscribe Chessbox Worldwide for more master analysis every week. Let's jump straight into the fire. And in the white pieces, the 2024 Bungoma Open champion, Were Samuel, opened the game with 1 e4, and Brenan Ampaire played his signature move, e6, the French defense, knight f3, d5, knight comes c3, pawn takes e5, knight takes e4, and he played knight d7 in anticipation of putting the knight on f6, and in case of knight taking knight on f6, the knight on d7 can always take back. d4, with the knight comes to f6, bishop g5 pinning the knight, bishop e7 and pinning, knight takes f6, knight takes f6, with the bishop d3, plan to go ahead for short castling from Brenan, short castling from the Bungoma champion. b6, opening up for the bishop to sit on b7 and take control of the whole of the diagonal. c3, bishop b7, rook coming to e1, centralizing the rook. Rook comes c8, plan to push the pawn on c5, and we see knight e4, centralizing the knight. c5, we see pawn takes c5, rook takes c5. Champion Were played queen c2, planning to bring the rook on d1, and we see h6 hitting on the bishop. In this position, bishop h4 should have been considered, for example, after bishop h4, queen c7, and bishop g3, with an interesting continuation. But however, after h6, Samuel went on and played rook d1, and in this position, Brenan Ampaire took his time and assessed the position. With total disrespect of the queen, Brenan Ampaire played pawn takes g5, sacrificing the queen, bishop h7 check, knight takes h7, rook takes d8, and rook takes d8. In this position, Brenan has sacrificed the queen for 3 pieces. In this position, he went on and played queen e2, but however, knight takes f7 should have been considered. For example, after knight takes f7, the king can't take the knight because the queen instantly recovers the knight by taking knight on h7. So in case of king takes f7, you could see queen takes h7, bishop d5, rook comes to e3, bishop f6, queen h5 check, and after the king comes to e7, f4, defending the pawn, bishop comes to c6, sitting on the pawn, queen e2, putting pressure on the pawn which is on e6, and rook d6. This would be a more playable position. But however, after rook takes d8, he played queen e2, and Brenan played knight f8, moving the knight from harm's way, h3, opening up a running square for the king, bishop comes to d6, knight g4, knight g6, queen comes to c2, knight h4. Now the knight and the bishop, they are looking at the pawn which is on g2, and he played knight e3, defending the pawn, bishop f4, hitting on knight which is on e3, so as to take the pawn which is on g2. Rook comes to d1, rook comes c8. In this position, Samuel went on and played g3, but however, rook d3 should have been considered, and in case of bishop takes e3, f takes e3, bishop takes g2, e4, and in case of bishop takes e4, rook takes d8, checking the king and also recovering and taking the bishop on e4. But however, after rook c8, he played g3, forking the 2 pieces, and since the bishop is sitting on this diagonal, Brenan played knight f3 check, after king f1, bishop c7, and in this position, he went on and played c4. But however, queen f4 should have been considered, putting an eye on the pawn which is on a7, and in case of pawn f5, then rook takes d8, rook takes d8 and b4 with a promising attack. But however, after bishop c7, he played c4, and Brenan played rook takes d1, and after queen takes d1, he played rook d8. Queen comes to f4, finally hitting on the pawn which is on a7, s6, defending the pawn, b4, moving forward also as to expand further on the queen side and try to get a passed pawn, g6, opening up a window for the king, c5, and now we see b5. He played queen a3, maintaining the queen to put an eye on the pawn which is on a6, rook d2, taking control of the second rank, and in this position he played c6, and after bishop takes c6 he played queen takes a6, hitting on the bishop instantly, rook d6 defending the bishop, and he played f4, and in case of pawn takes f4, then the pawn will be advancing forward to disorganize the harmony of the pieces. Knight d2 check, and after king e1, pawn takes f4, and we see b5 from Samuel. He played bishop f3, opening up an attack on the queen and also putting the bishop on the strategic square. Samuel went and played queen c8, but however, queen a7 should have been considered, putting an eye on the pawn which is on f4 and also putting an eye on the knight. And in case of knight e4, we could have seen queen takes c7 and rook d2. Yes, the position is promising, but still it's a fighting game. But however, after bishop f3, he played queen c8 check, and in this position, after bishop d8, blocking the check, queen b8, hitting on the rook at the same time, putting an eye on the bishop which is sitting on d8. He played rook d3, and in this position, Samuel went and played queen a7, attacking the pawn which is sitting on f4. But however, b6 should have been considered, and in case of f3, b7, a2, queen a7, and in case of bishop takes b7, queen takes a2, bishop comes back on e4, and also trying to secure a d1 square, and also the queen check, knight f3, and king f1. And remember, the bishop on e4 is untouchable, because in the case of queen takes e4, then the knight check forks the queen and the king instantly. Let's go back. After rook d3, he played queen a7, hitting on the f4 pawn, at the same time also putting an eye on the knight. And now in this position, Brenan sacrificed another piece. He played knight c4, opening up a discovered checkmate in one. In case of knight takes c4, then the rook d1 will be checkmate. Someone played queen takes f4. In this position, even bishop f5 is winning, or even rook comes to f3 is also winning. However, in this position, in case of bishop comes to f5 check, and in case of king f1, rook f3 to be checkmate in a few. But however, after queen f4, Brenan played rook f3, hitting on the queen, and in this position, Samuel desperately went and played queen takes c4, and Brenan played bishop f5 check, and then after king f1, he delivered the check, and that is rook a1 check, and the only move you have to do is sacrifice the queen, which is going to be taken by the rook, and this would be checkmate. Thank you for watching, and I wish you the best of luck in your games.